To be just a quick demo of this JavaScript React front-end project that I'm still very much working on in development. Wanted to put a video out there for two reasons. One, just to show some people what I'm currently working on, but also especially when it comes to some of the policy matters of this project, and that'll um, make more sense in a second. But I actually would like to get some feedback and help from people who are more in the know about those things to make sure that I don't misrepresent any of the data that I'm trying to make accessible here. So as you can see from this sort of about landing page, the app I'm building is one based around trying to make some of the information, the sort of benefits information of some presently proposed federal housing policies a little more accessible for the people whose lives they might be able to have an impact on. Um, the affordable housing crisis is a genuinely real issue right now, and whether you think the government should or should not be doing anything about it, I think it's important for everyone to be more informed and have a better sense of what some of these policies are looking to do. So, regardless of how they feel about it, they can be a little more informed going into those conversations. To just get started, I'll sort of walk through the app and the sort of general layout I've built out for it, the sort of organizational structure. At the end, I'll speak a little more about some of the uh, software engineering decisions I made here, both on the back end and the front end, but we'll just sort of walk through it to start. So it is a single page app. It's built with React, so it's a single page app, but you'll see that there are a few different sort of routes and that we're working with, so it looks as if we're traveling between pages. It's really just components re-rendering. But as a user approaches, they have access to both sort of a nav bar up here. You'll see, I should mention, I have not thought of a name for this app yet, but there's a sort of nav bar up here, and then you can also just navigate through with these sort of central buttons. The idea is that I realized looking at some of these proposals and the reviews and descriptions written by experts about them that a lot of these policies are trying to make benefits available based on some pretty simple information from the people they'd be affecting. So really, if a person is able to provide their zip code, an estimate of their income, and what they're paying for rent, then with a little more data, so from the Census Bureau, my app is retrieving from the Census Bureau API, my app is retrieving the area median income for that area, and from Housing and Urban Development, I'm retrieving the fair market rent evaluations for that area as well. But with sort of all that data, those sort of these pieces here from the user, and then the pieces that my app is retrieving on the back end, we're able to get really a pretty good estimate, at least as far as the policies have been described to me, a pretty good estimate of what some of those policies are going to be able to do for people on an individual basis. So we'll just type in the zip code where I live in Winston-Salem. Let's say maybe someone making $25,000 a year, paying $700 a month on rent for I don't know, we'll say 2-bedroom apartment or something like that. Go ahead and submit. And we get down here a sort of list of the sort of bullet points of what the different policies might be able to do. And this is a very simplified macro view of this that I'm then going to try to extend out for people, try to sort of draw them in to read more about the policy and get a little more nuance to this data. But it tells you sort of what policies they're eligible for benefits under, and then gives sort of a quick rundown of what those are going to mean. $175 a year in tax credit from Kamala Harris's, potentially the ability to receive government assistance on a down payment if you're a first-time home buyer, from Elizabeth Warren's policy, a similar tax credit on Cory Booker's as you get on Kamala Harris's. And then clicking on these, I haven't quite implemented the links here, but they'll essentially take you to this sort of policy information page where we'll get more information. So these numbers I'm querying and receiving from Census Bureau and from Housing and Urban Development, the fair market rent for the area, median income for the area, those numbers will be available. And I haven't built this out in part because, and part of making this video because I do want some feedback from people who are a little bit of policy experts on this. But then clicking on any of these links then would be able to sort of continue to build out not only personally tailored information here, but also just like a general policy review and sort of forecast of what those policies are doing. Especially because some of them, and I'm thinking of Elizabeth Warren's here, seem to be doing a lot of really important work, but it's not quite readable in terms of a single number or a few different numbers for an individual. A lot of them have to do with, expanding FHA protections or something like that. So I want users to be able to get a more nuanced and more comprehensive sense of those things here, so that they're not misled by the single data byte up here that they're getting. That's pretty much it for the sort of layout of the app, what I'm sort of going for here. I'll speak for a second for anyone who's still interested about what I'm doing sort of on the programming side of things. But please, if you're seeing this video and you have any comments or feedback, if you have any suggestions, please reach out to me. I'll have my contact information in the comment section below. But I'd love to hear from you. So speaking as a programmer, this is an app that is built in two parts, a front end and a back end that I'm keeping separate. The front end is built out with JavaScript, with React and Redux, and the back end is built out with Ruby using Rails. The back end really just serves as an API, so when people submit this form here, there's a post request going through, logging that data, running a few callback methods that are querying the Census Bureau and Housing and Urban Development APIs, and getting some response figures there. They're building out user objects that I'm persisting in a SQL coded database, but not quite sure what to do with that information yet. I'm thinking maybe it'll be nice to have that persisted so that users can, for instance, on this policy page, perhaps users might have a button or a drop-down menu here that allows them to see these numbers, but compare them to previous. If they've used the form several times and submitted a few, I could maybe use some sort of cookies, or using their browser cookies, I could store in the local storage maybe some of the past submissions they provided, so they can compare some of those numbers. Anyways, the bulk of the work being done here is really on the back end, getting all of that data standardized, then serialized, getting it sent out to the APIs, doing a little bit of algorithmic work to figure out which numbers available on those APIs are correct for them. So HUD, Housing and Urban Development, has different fair market rent values, but they depend on certain other factors. So there's a little bit of algorithmic math just going on there to get that all processed. Then I'm just sending back a JSON object to React. It's getting stored in the React Redux store, so that information I can then connect my different components to that to get them available as needed. And especially because people can submit different data on this component that then will affect other components, I'm using Redux to keep that that data stored on sort of the client side of things, so that I can continue to interact with it on different sides of my front end without having to continue to get in touch with my back end to make that happen. Trying to think if there's other programming decisions that are worth mentioning here. No, I think that's probably it. It's the programming side of things I'm excited about. I'm excited about the sort of work I'm able to do with a lot of these API queries and using React to keep a lot of this data held on the front end. So the last app I built, it was fully Ruby Rails with some JavaScript Ajax, but I was constantly having to get in touch with, constantly having to send GET and POST requests, or there was a constant request response cycle between the sort of front end side of things and the back end side of things, because it was a little more difficult to keep all of that data stored on the client side of things. React has made that a lot easier, so I'm pretty happy about the programming decisions React and Redux have allowed me to use in that regard. But if you have suggestions about anything you see here, in the same way that I mentioned about policy, any suggestions, any feedback, I'd certainly welcome them. This is an app I'm really excited about, but I'm only excited about it because I think it could be very useful, and any information I can get from anyone seeing this video who could make this app more useful, I would be very happy for it. So I appreciate that in advance. Thanks so much.